Hello, I'm Michael. I'm the creator of Attention Bazaar, an online store. You'll find a description for that below this video. Today's topic is an encouraging way to measure progress. This is something that I developed in working with clients who often could become discouraged about their progress, particularly in trying to make progress in coming out of depression or anxiety of long-term nature. There's a discouraging thing that can happen making progress, and then there's a relapse, a recurrence of either a panic attack or anxious episode or an episode of depression. And it can seem like, what's the use? I can't get rid of this. If it comes back, I haven't made any progress at all. I'm really trying to lick this once and for all. That way of thinking, I have seen, leads to real deep discouragement, hopelessness, and sometimes resignation about it. And it's not necessary, because I think there's a realistic and more hopeful way to think about progress when we're trying to overcome things like anxiety and depression. Might be for addictions as well, various things, whether it's substances or behavioral addictions. The idea that there's a relapse and all the effort is lost. Why bother if I do all this work and it just comes back? If you like this video, please give it a like and share it with somebody that you think might also like it, be interested and perhaps benefit from it. Also, please subscribe, and below you'll find a description for my online store called Attention Bazaar, as well as a link so that you can visit and browse and perhaps find something that's just right for you. Thank you. Let's get back to the video now. So here's a different way of thinking about it. Instead of thinking about whether something is present or gone once and for all, what about thinking about how often it happens, how long it lasts, and the intensity of whatever it is, maybe measured on a scale of 1 to 10. So frequency is, if the thing that's really troubling you comes up every day, it's a daily thing, or maybe it's over time. There's once a month or once a season. There's a depressive dip, or it could be anxiety as well. The usual pattern has a certain frequency to it. Once you begin to address it and make some progress, how often does it happen? Instead of every day, does it happen every other day? Does it happen 5 days a week instead of 7? That's progress. Of course, you may want more, but recognize that that's progress. So that's the frequency, but there's also the duration. How long does it last? An anxious episode can last quite a long time. Eventually, one gets exhausted from it, but it can go on several days, go on longer. Maybe it's a panic attack, and it lasts for a few hours. Usually. But if the frequency is decreasing, what about the duration? Does it last less long? Is the depression not a week long? Is it 4 days instead of 7? That's progress. So there's frequency, duration, and then there's intensity. There's a feeling of anxiety, and then there's a full-blown, I think I'm going to die, panic attack. Again, you can put it on a scale of 1 to 10. Maybe the anxiety is a 3 or a 4 instead of an 8 or a 9. And same with the depression. How low is it? How utterly miserable, were there suicidal thoughts? Was it just a bleak mood? Or was it just, life is a bit boring, I'm not sure what the point is? Less intense. So if you put these three together, you can begin to see a pattern of progress. Whether it's extinguishing a symptom like anxiety or depression, or an addiction, anybody who's worked on this, whether personally or professionally, understands and has seen that it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. There's always a back and forth. It doesn't just go like that in one direction. It's to be expected and to be ready for it. And I think having a different conception of how to measure progress is useful, because it's not putting on rose-colored glasses, it's putting on better glasses, being able to see more clearly, more detail, not just the gross level, I'm fine or I'm not, but I'm on a path and things are getting better. A good way to implement this is to keep a journal, to write things down. If there's a behavior or a symptom that you're trying to alleviate, when it occurs, make a note. Make a note of when it happened. Make a note of how long it happened. Give it a score from 1 to 10. And just keep a record. And over time, you can look back and you can begin to see that if you've carried on addressing it, if you've continued to do practices and make the effort, you'll see progress. It may not be as fast as you'd like, but it's still progress. And here's a tough thing to say, and probably a tough thing to hear. There are some things that may never absolutely go away. If you're somebody who's had a long history of recurrent depressions, it may be that there's always the possibility of another one upon the future horizon. But it doesn't have to be frequent. It doesn't have to last long, and it doesn't have to be intense. But learning to live with it, learning to anticipate it, learning how to get over it quicker, how to minimize the intensity of it. That's the point. Not whether you're going to be a perky, cheerful, happy person continuously, whether you even really want that, is doubtful. With addictions, sometimes it is important, well, not sometimes, it's important to consider that one is in recovery. There's a debate about this, whether one can be recovered, ED, but I think understanding that one may always be vulnerable and be vigilant to not allow it to happen. I think, recovery from addiction to substances, I think shooting for being done once and for all, eventually, is the goal. There are just experiences and behaviors that we'd like to extinguish. I think there's things that we'd like to cultivate. and grow, habits that we'd like to see ourselves get into. And we could use the same way of measuring our progress in that regard as well. If you haven't worked out for a long time, you haven't been to the gym, you may not go all that frequently. You may just go a couple times a week. Your workout may not be very long. It may not be very intense. But as you progress, you'll add to frequency, duration, and intensity. And you can be pleased to see that it's going in a direction, understanding that it may have to start small. And with any other positive habits that we want to cultivate, we could take the same approach. Again, I had to think of a way to support people I work with so that they didn't become discouraged by a relapse or a regression to a state or behavior that they're trying to get away from. I think this is a more hopeful way to measure progress. It allows us to be encouraged. So if you give it a go, I wish you luck with it. If there's something in your life, in your experience that you'd like to address, and you'd like to diminish some level of pain and suffering that isn't necessary, then apply these 3 criteria for measuring your progress, and may you make progress. Thanks for listening. And as always, thanks for clicking and sticking with me to the end here. And take care. Till next time. Bye-bye.